Breaking news, the president has just sent a letter letting the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, know that he accepts her original invitation to talk with a joint Congress State of the Union address on January 29th. And we've been sharing with you parts of that letter. I want to read the final paragraph because it kind of sums it up. I look forward to seeing you on the evening of January 29th in the chamber of the House of Representatives. It would be very sad for our country if the State of the Union were not delivered on time. And then now I'm going to go to the next bit of information here from our producer, Chad Pergram, keeping us informed of what the next steps are. So it's still going to be Speaker Pelosi's call, and here's why. The House and Senate still must approve a concurrent resolution approving the use of the chamber for the State of the Union and authorizing the president to speak before a joint session of Congress. But the president now skipping over the second letter. Telling him that perhaps it weren't going to happen, but not completely canceling it, but accepting that January 3rd letter, which he then points out also in his, that, it was long after the government had shut down. So for her to then dip in and say she was worried about security, and I'll add again, she did not check with the Secret Service or DHS on that. Joe, I see you nodding.
You ought to. I mean, one of the things that would be very important is if you're going to make statements, which I've sat in this spot before. I've made some statements, and I've got tweets, and I get emails that say, "Are your facts correct?" These facts are.
No, that never happens.
I know it never happens. It probably has never happened to you, but it actually did happen to me one of the first times I was here, and it really put me on alert to say, make sure you understand what you're talking about before you talk about it. Make sure you have your facts correct if you're going to make a statement that is verifiable. And I think it lends credibility to the position that you've taken. And so in Speaker Pelosi's case, you have that about the security, which really isn't an issue.
I don't know how she thought she was going to go away with that.
So can I just talk about...
They're both playing a game.
Can I talk about the deal-making that's going on right now? The deal-making is not really about whether or not we're going to see a State of the Union or Nancy Pelosi can use military transport or anything. The deal-making is about the government shutdown right now. And so now my question is, where are these two in their relationship and their ability to do a deal? John Roberts is about to join us now from the North Lawn. And, John, it just got interesting yet again. But at the center of this is opening the government. What difference is this going to make in the overall picture?
I don't think that this will make any difference in the overall picture of opening the government. I mean, that all depends what happens in the Senate later on today. But now the president, and we knew that the president was likely going to make this move because we were told yesterday that the president wanted to fulfill his constitutional obligation to deliver the State of the Union address as scheduled next Tuesday. So now he has codified that with a letter back to Nancy Pelosi saying that he plans to be there next Tuesday night. Security was the reason why Nancy Pelosi had originally asked the president to postpone or deliver the State of the Union in writing. The president says in the letter, quote, "I was contacted by the Department of Homeland Security and the United States Secret Service to explain that there would be absolutely no problem regarding security with respect to the event. They have since confirmed this publicly." We had that reporting last week. Accordingly, he continues to write, "There are no security concerns regarding the State of the Union address. Therefore, I will be honoring your invitation." They missed an R there. "And fulfilling my constitutional duty to deliver important information to the people in Congress of the United States of America regarding the state of our union. I look forward to seeing you on the evening of January 29th in the chamber of the House. It would be so very sad for our country if the State of the Union were not delivered on time, on schedule, and very importantly, on location." So what this does now, Harris, is this firmly whacks the ball back into Nancy Pelosi's court. So she's got a couple of choices here. She can, let the State of the Union go ahead, or she can disinvite the president. I mean, if she really doesn't want him up there on Tuesday with a forum to be able to talk about all the things he wants to talk about, then she's going to have to disinvite him. That would be precedent setting, and I'm not sure how that would go over with the nation.
Can I ask you, because, I mean, if you move on to the idea of getting this whole thing resolved, which is really the backdrop to the whole State of the Union thing. There's all this talk about, you know, there's got to be a big idea out there for resolving this, some big deal that everybody could come together on. I believe it was Axios had this story about Republicans floating an idea of green cards for those 700,000 DACA recipients, that maybe that's something, you know, a big deal that would make this all kind of come to a conclusion. What are you hearing on that front? Is any of that real?
Well, in terms of big deals, the State of the Union is not it. It's not part of the big deals. Let's put that to the side. But this idea of green cards or some sort of path to status or citizenship for DACA recipients, that's something that's a non-starter among most of the president's base and among a large swath of Republicans in Congress. Now, you know, you bring these bills to the floor and you open them up to the amendment process. Anything can happen. So who knows what would ultimately get passed by the Senate. And then the House could either take up the Senate bill or they could even start action on their own if they wanted to. But I think what's interesting here, Melissa and Harris, is this idea that we're beginning to see some movement in Congress at the very least. But the president, again, throwing down the gauntlet to Nancy Pelosi to say, if you don't want me there on Tuesday night, you've got to disinvite me. We'll see what happens.
Ooh, John Roberts, there at the White House. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
NBC's Savannah Guthrie interviewed Nick Sandmann, the reluctant face of the Covington controversy. First up, some people.
Some people see as a young kid with a smirk on his face.
There's that some people again. One day I'd like to meet some people. Some say it's Savannah Guthrie. Then came Nathan Phillips' claim of a build the wall chant that apparently no one else heard.
Did anyone say build the wall?
I never heard anyone say build the wall, and I don't think I've seen it in any videos.
After a review of the videos, NBC News could not hear anyone shouting that hot button phrase.
So no one chanted it. But what if they did? Some say we're letting liberal fascists decide what can't be said in public. The black Israelites said things that we can't repeat here, but it's build the wall that matters most. It's a hot button issue, some say, which is media for let's trash you. Then came the hat.
Do you think if you weren't wearing that hat, this might not have happened, or it might have been different?
That's possible, but I would have to assume what Mr. Phillips was thinking, and I'd rather let him speak for why he came up to us.
Sound familiar? You go out wearing that, clearly you're asking for it, because you're just a victim of your own choices and actions.
You neglect that they were mainly victims of their own choices and actions. Shouldn't we discuss that? Wonder if the hats had anything to do with your muted response.
Imagine saying that about a feminist protester and her clothes. Funny how the media, who claim their speech is always under threat because of Trump, are now dictating what words and clothing are forbidden. Then they blame the victim. Hell, now standing is even hateful.
There's something aggressive about standing there, standing your ground. You both stood your ground. And it was like a stare down. What do you think of that now when you think about that moment?
Oh, I would say Mr. Phillips had his right to come up to me. I had my right to stay there.
I don't know, maybe standing is the only thing to do when a stranger beats his drum in your face. But then Guthrie questioned why the teens would be scared of male adult strangers aggressively taunting them.
Did you feel threatened at all?
I definitely felt threatened.
There were more of you than them, but you felt like they were stronger?
They were a group of adults, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen next.
Okay, so get this. When a teen is standing quietly, somehow that's threatening. But when four crackpots threaten you, that's just good-natured fun. Meanwhile, the Washington Post whines that the right has seized on their screw-up. So after pushing this smear, they're now blaming others for getting caught. Some might say the outcry prevented the press from doing far worse. So watching the media analyze this mess, I feel like I'm watching a murderer doing an autopsy on his own victim. It must be suicide, they declare. Well, some say they suck. All right, Jesse, so we heard from the kid. Isn't it time that we see Nathan up there answering some questions, too?
Yes, I think Nathan needs to go get the Savannah treatment, but this is the thing. He won't be able to answer her questions. I just did a little investigation because the media won't, and Nathan Phillips, fresh off of this confrontation with the student, disrupted and attempted to disrupt the mass at D.C.'s National Shrine. He tried with a bunch of people, 20 of them, to go bang drums, invade the National Shrine during Mass on this day, and they had to have security block him and lock the doors as he attempted to gain entry. It's also come to our attention, this guy never served in Vietnam. He was a Marine, but a lot of reports are saying he went AWOL 4 times and actually had to be put in the brig. But he's on video saying when he returned from Vietnam, he was called a baby killer and spit on. You never went to Vietnam. So Phillips also gave an interview, and no one's even talked about this. He was talking about what he was thinking. This guy, Phillips, said these white students were in the process of attacking the black individuals. Didn't happen. They were, quote, beasts, preying on the black individuals, and he called the students racists, and he said the looks on the kids' faces were similar to the faces during lynchings in the South. Now, this guy's story has changed 7 times. The fact that the media believed this guy without checking anything, what else is the media being told and just running with? Mm-hmm. How do we know?
It fit their assumptions. I mean, the thing, what kills me, Jed, is the idea, like, if you're wearing something, you had it coming. Yeah. We've learned that that's not what you say to people.
Yeah, the nerve to say that to a kid, too.
Yeah,
And
you obviously
if you
wearing
say
a
that
hat.
to a woman, oh, you were wearing, that's that line, oh, you're wearing a skirt like that, you deserve it. I mean, it's crazy. Mm-hmm. And they're counting on, see, you just did that research, but they're counting on no one doing that, or you do it, but it doesn't get propagated, it doesn't get sent out. All they need is that initial clip and the judgments to be made. Now, imagine if you went out and you were at a march and you were a kid and you had a bunch of adults screaming at you, shouting horrific things. I'm still trying to figure out what this kid did wrong. I see he smirked. I see that. I see maybe he had a little bit, he was confused. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't assault anybody. He didn't even shout back. How many people can say that as a teenager, their first instinct wouldn't have been to say something back, to say, no, you're this, or they didn't even do that. These kids were on their best behavior, frankly, given what was going on if you watched the before and after. And I can't believe that we're still talking about a smirk from a kid because he had a MAGA hat on. Yeah. If he didn't have a MAGA hat and that was not a pro-life protest, this would not be a story.
No, it wouldn't. And, you know, Dana, the lesson I learned, I'm never, ever looking at a viral video again, because it is actually, it's so funny that it's called viral, because it's contagious, pernicious, and
it makes you sick.
It makes you sick. Yes.
It does make you sick. The other thing is, remember back in the day, before the internet's?
Early 50s?
This would not have been a national story or an international story at all. It would have been a local D.C. story. Maybe on the nationals, maybe on the national news, but unlikely to have ever gone beyond that. And so now these kids are having to go on the Today Show, which is quite intimidating. And not that Savannah's intimidating, but look, like, you're basically on your own there in a room. You're 17 years old, 15 years, whatever, however old he is. And what I read was that the left and the right was mad at Savannah Guthrie after this interview. I'm not sure why the left would be mad.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to say, Juan, I wouldn't have performed as well as that kid did in an event like that. That's like his first time on TV, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. His facial expression was frozen. He looked like he's terrified. I don't know. Now, clearly, they hired a PR firm to represent him.
How dare they?
And
I know.
train him and all that. But I just got to say to you guys, I don't understand how you've made this young man into some, victim here.
He's clearly not a victim.
What you're saying is, let's blame the media. And you and I agreed yesterday, by the way, the social media platform that spread this, right, we don't even know who they are, where they're from. And
we know who the Washington Post is and what they did.
Hang on. And they have intentionally pushed out polarizing type videos intended to stress.
But the people who push them are always liberal media.
I'm
letting you finish, Juan.
No, relax, finish your monologue, but I'm just saying.
Control. Breathe in, Juan. Breathe in.
If the mainstream media had ignored this story, and I think Dana's right, I don't think the local section of the Washington Post would have covered this story. Yeah. But if the mainstream media had ignored the fact that the right and left picked up on this, then they would say, oh my gosh, why is the mainstream media ignoring this big story? But in fact, let me tell you, tomorrow night, I'm going to go watch a basketball game tomorrow night. The black Israelites will be standing there and they'll be saying rude things to me, my wife. They say them to everybody.
But you had it coming, Juan.
Thank you. But people don't stand there and engage. And then these
this is the first time they ever saw them.
They were waiting for their bus to go home.
Come on, Juan. Let me just say, you said it 8 times.
Those kids stand there, and he says, oh, well, I'm just standing there. No, he's staring down that Native American guy.
The guy got in his face. What do you want to do?
He walks over.
He directly walked into his face and banged a drum in his face.
You got 4 or 5 black Israelites. You got about 2 busloads of these kids, and suddenly, oh, they're feeling so threatened.
You have adults and children. Adults and children.
This is ridiculous. And then you talk about things like blackface at basketball games if you want to bring up things.
Oh, you want to talk about that? We can talk about what that means. In another block, they have these events where they go black, they go white, they go different colors.
Yeah,
so it was a racial thing. Okay, we'll go look into that.
All right.
Juan.